All right, Q&A time. Got 5 questions. First one, let's get right into it. Here we go. From Johnny V. Do some people take the tips home and cash out once per week, or is it frowned upon? Do dealers still play while they are at work to keep a game going? Okay, interesting. 2 questions, really. Taking tips home. So I only know Orleans and Planet Hollywood. Orleans really doesn't want you to. I don't think you would get penalized, like, formally. I'm not sure, but there are signs to cash out your tips before you leave. They're worried they're going to run out of chips, because almost all the tips the cash game dealers get are 1s and 2s. They need the 1s for all the no-limit games, for the blinds and for change. They need the 1s for the 3-6 limit, for the 4-8 limit, for the 4-8 Omaha 8. They need the 2s for, you know, the rake and the promo, if the rake is exactly 2 or 3 or 4, and if the promo is exactly 2, and they also use the 2s for 8/16 Omaha 8. So they're using all those chips in a lot of games. They don't want them, like, disappearing from the building. So they really don't want you to. PH, no such signs exist anywhere that I know of, but I mean, I don't know why you would take them home unless you forgot. I forgot once at Orleans, brought them back the next day, but I don't know what other dealers do. I cash them out every day. That's all I can tell you. Second part of the question was, do dealers play to keep games going? For that purpose, I don't think so. I know some rooms allow dealers to play. I know the 4 MGM rooms in town allow dealers to play. Sometimes, like, they don't want to send a dealer home. This happens at Aria a lot. They don't want to send a dealer home because it might be like a couple hours till the next new dealer shows up. And they're worried they might get a list and want to start a game in the next 2 hours. So there's a dealer, like, on the clock earning a wage, but not in the lineup. That dealer's, like, on standby. And if time goes by and they don't need that dealer, eventually they send that dealer home, and then a new dealer shows up who will start a new game if they need it. Or if it gets real busy, they'll go to that table that the dealer is playing and say, like, you need to pick up, we need you to deal. You don't need to play while you're in that standby scenario, but your options are pretty much like play poker or, like, sit quietly in the EDR and, like, do nothing. So a lot of dealers choose to play. Second question, a bunch of people have asked this, or some close variants. Rice would love some content regarding your views on whether Vegas is seeing struggles. If so, your view on why, and if deals to be had. Any insight on what you're seeing? So traffic. Yeah, a lot of people have asked. I know on, like, the news, if you consider that a reliable source, I think the number of people, like, flying into town is down from this time last year. I think they're claiming fewer people are, like, on the ground here on the Strip. I haven't noticed it. Summer was very busy. I walked to work on July 4th. It was literally the busiest I've ever seen the Strip. Cars and people. Orleans was busy. I think we only missed 1 guarantee all summer in, like, 200 tournaments. From watching Negranu's videos at the series, I think a lot of the tournaments he was playing, the field was a little bigger than the same tournament in 2024. The only thing that happened that made me think there's, like, a decrease from a certain part of the world, which I mentioned when it came by, when it happened, the main event at Orleans having way fewer clock calls and way fewer people tanking. Now, it still was more than any other tournament all summer, but it was noticeably less to me than the main event in 2024. And European players love tanking just for sport, for absolutely no reason. So it made me think way fewer people were in town from Europe just during the main event days that I dealt at Orleans, although I met plenty of people from the UK, met plenty of people from Canada, the UK, and Australia. Those are the countries besides the US that have the most people who watch my videos. Of course, the English-speaking countries, but met plenty of people from all 3 of those countries this year. So I know a lot of people have been asking about it. A lot of people have been saying it. I haven't been noticing it firsthand. Great question from Import. Let me ask you, when you deal cash games and you first sit down at the table, what do you say? And what do you say when you leave? Excellent. So sometimes when I sit, I say hi everybody. A lot of times I say nothing. people probably would prefer it if I say something. When I say nothing, it's because that's what I prefer when I'm playing. I prefer the dealer to just sit and get the first hand out as quickly as possible and not take time like staring at the rack and like making small talk. So a lot of times I just very quickly get to the first hand. When I leave in a cash game, I almost always say new dealer, thanks everybody, because like I was getting tipped directly from the players. When I leave a tournament table, I usually don't say thanks everybody. I still like that they're playing in the room. A table going is good for the room, but since they weren't tipping me directly, it feels a little odd. I usually say new dealer coming in, enjoy your tournament. Next one was somewhat odd, somewhat interesting. Now poker seems to have really slowed down, so I wonder what your thoughts are on what your hourly wage will be. Sounds like you keep the game going. I don't know what that last sentence means, but hourly wage. A better question would be, what do you think, what I think my hours would be? Because my hours are definitely going to be less than over the summer. I'm on schedule 4 days a week now, not 5. Also have one job now, not 2. But per hour, don't see a difference. I mean, the wage can't be different. I get the same wage just for being on the clock. Tournament downs, my most common shift at PH is 1 tournament down, so that's, even though that changes pay period to pay period, 1 down per day isn't really enough to affect anything. And if you're just asking about hourly, not total hours, not total money, hourly, it really comes down to, are the tips I get while dealing cash games going to be different now than during the summer? That's really not a function of how many tables are going. If I'm dealing a cash game and there are 7 cash games going in PH, or I'm dealing a cash game and there are 2 cash games going in PH, like, I'm getting the same amount of hands out. It's the same, like 1-3 no limit table. I really don't see a different, and if there, I don't expect the number to be the exact same. If you took my like tips per down in August compared to June, I don't expect the 2 numbers to be identical to the penny, but it's just going to be like a small sample. That's the reason it's going to be different. I don't expect the difference to be caused by the fact that the energy is less in the room. There's less sound. There are fewer tables going in the room at certain times of the day. I'll have fewer hours for a while, but I don't expect the dollars per hour to be different. All right, last question. Well, I've been standing here next to this motorcycle the entire time. Yeah, that's a motorcycle, not a chopper, right? Last question. Would you think of being a traveling WSOP circuit dealer if rooms in Vegas closed, since you like traveling, or would you only do the circuit in Vegas? Yeah, if I stop living here permanently and I stop being like a permanent Planet Hollywood dealer, I don't see myself dealing like tons of circuit stops or really dealing much outside Vegas. So I came up with a list, like, once I was traveling after the summer last year. Here's a portion of it. The left column is the World Series of Poker circuit stops. The right column is the Run Good Series stops. And I think if it's in red, that's like I was trying to plan out a route for the year if I just like had my pick. Not that it's anywhere near that easy to get on those rosters. Yeah, you know, I found out all the contact information of some people and looked up the last few years where these stops are, what dates, what months. Like, would this driving route from New York to Vegas, back to New York at the end of the year make sense? And it eventually got to the point where I realized, like, if I did too many stops, it would basically be the exact opposite of what I'm looking for. Like, an occasional stop to deal, I'd be cool with that. But if it's like non-stop tournament series, I need to be here this week. 2 weeks later, I got to be there. 2 weeks later, I got to be there. 3 weeks later, I got to be there. It's the exact opposite of what I'm looking for, actually. Yeah, I'm not like in one city all year, but there becomes a point where it's actually like the exact opposite of like having like the ability to go where I want. I got to be in all these places, all these dates, and there's not a lot of flexibility between those dates. So if I ever went back to, so it never really happened. Last year I just dealt the Orleans Summer Series, and now a permanent PH dealer. If I ever stop being a permanent dealer, ideally for me, And I'm not even sure if I could get on all these rosters. Probably to start the year in January, deal the Borgata Winter Series. I know someone who did that this year, and he said it was like non-stop 9-hour days. Sounds awesome, and I wouldn't be very far. Then maybe try to get on the Horseshoe Baltimore Circuit roster. I think that was February this year. Also wouldn't be very far from Baltimore that part of the year. And then try to get on the World Series of Poker Circuit roster here in Vegas in March. Of course, deal something over the summer, probably Orleans. And that's probably about it. The one other thing I would consider, which I actually like put together all the costs and the logistics. If I go back to traveling, which means I would be in the Northeast towards the end of the year, would flying back to Vegas to deal the Orleans Winter Series for 4 weeks be worth it? There would be 2 flights involved. If I could get an Airbnb close enough to Orleans, I would not need to rent a car. If I couldn't get an Airbnb that close, I would need to rent a car. I would need, and then paying for the Airbnb, and then I would have the income, which is an estimate. I don't know exactly how many days, how many hours there would be, but probably same thing to dealing the 2 jobs this year. Schrodinger's cat, I wouldn't know until I did it. So if I'm ever in that scenario again, I'm up for doing it once and seeing what it's like, and hopefully I profit, I don't break even, and I don't get so few hours that I lose money. But yeah, so it would be those, it would definitely be the summer, and of the circuit here in March, Orleans Winter Series, Borgata in January, Horseshoe Baltimore in February. It would probably be like 2 of those 4 things in addition to Orleans all summer. But not what the viewer asked, not just like constant World Series of Poker Circuit stops. I'm trying to get on like every single roster and have a different stop every 2 weeks. No, I wouldn't want to do something like that. And remember, by the way, if you don't believe me that I film here next to where the horses hang out, this is the most proof I could give you right now. The horses hang out right behind that fence. And remember, rice is a spoon food.